I'm Darian Alexis, and welcome to a 20-something survival guide, the place where you and me learn to survive and thrive in our 20s and beyond. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. Hey everyone! Today's episode is all about confidence, overcoming limiting beliefs, and achieving your goals, no matter how hard they may be. Today I'm joined with Miss Galaxy Australia, Kimmi Jayne, who's a personal branding and confidence coach, a podcaster as well, and the founder of Kimmi Jayne Consulting. So hi Kimmi, thanks for joining today.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I am so excited to dive into today's episode.
I'm so excited you're here. Can you first start by talking a little bit about yourself as well as your journey into pageantry?
100%. So hi everyone, my name is Kimmi Jayne. As per the lovely introduction, I am a pageant queen representing Australia as Miss Galaxy Australia, actually going to Orlando, Florida later this year. I've started a consulting business, so I teach women all things personal branding and confidence and mindset coaching. And I'm really here today just to talk about, I guess, the importance of developing one's confidence and how to actually do that in a practical, actionable way as someone who used to have literally zero confidence growing up. So yeah, I know it can be quite a journey. That's why I'm so passionate about helping other women, learn some actual implementable tools and steps that they can take to really unleash their full potential.
I love that. And if I'm being completely frank with you, I'm still in my confidence journey. As some of my listeners will say, and even my friends, they'll be like, Darian, you're one of the most confident people that I know. But you know what? Sometimes I feel like you have to fake it till you make it. So I'm so excited that you're here and you can give us some strategies and some tips to really help us further our journey and our understanding with ourselves. So can you talk a little bit about what it means to be Miss Galaxy Australia?
Sure. So, what does it mean to be Miss Galaxy Australia? Well, basically, this pageant system is all about becoming the best version of yourself, doing things like public speaking, volunteering in our communities, and really trying to make a positive impact. So being Miss Galaxy Australia, I do a lot of volunteer work in my community. Right now I'm volunteering for a place called Print Radio Tasmania, which makes things like the newspapers accessible to those who might not necessarily be able to read by reading it on radio, and that's a free service. So that's something I love doing because it kind of combines, my skills, I guess, in public speaking and branding and things like that. But at the moment, I'm preparing for the international pageant, which will be in Orlando, Florida this August.
Yay!
Yeah, so right now what it means to be Miss Galaxy Australia is a lot of preparation. So really doing my volunteer work, practicing for interview and stage, and just making sure that I'm going into it really prepared, because you only really get one shot at an international pageant. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
That's so interesting. So can you talk a little bit more about how you got here and how you got this title? I know some of my listeners are also in the pageant system, but I myself am not. So it's something completely new and fresh to me. So did you start when you were younger? Is it something you had to keep trying for a few years? And how did your confidence grow throughout that journey?
That is such a good question. So it's been a 10-year journey. The first time I ever did a pageant, it was actually the Galaxy system, and that was 10 years ago. I'm about to turn 30 this September, so I won't be in my 20s for much longer. So it was 10 years ago I entered, the Galaxy Australia pageant, and that was to actually build my confidence. I remember I would have been literally 20 years old. I was still struggling to do things like even speaking in front of my classmates at university. When you have to do presentations and things like that, I would literally just want to not show up. I would want to go to the bathroom or something. I hated speaking in front of others. I would stutter and just found it such a painful experience. I just didn't have any confidence really at all in so many areas. It affects dating, it affects honestly every area of your life. And I really hated that about myself. And I wished at that time that I could have changed it. If you could have given me a magic button to push, I would have pushed it. I remember seeing the Galaxy pageant advertised, and it was all about becoming the best version of yourself and building confidence and making friends. And I was like, why not just try it? Maybe that could help me. And I entered it thinking as if I'm going to get in. And then I did, and I was like, oops, now I have to go to this pageant. So I remember going to the pageant on the Gold Coast, and it was the most amazing experience. It was being in a movie or staying at this resort. We got to do photo shoots. I did feel a little bit like I was in over my head because a lot of the girls there were pageant veterans. They'd been doing the rounds for years. They knew exactly what to do. And I was just like, whoa, what are fake eyelashes? How much fake hair do you need? Like a whole experience. And I felt like very fresh, very green. And I was terrified, and I remember getting up on stage and my jaw like shaking, trying to hold my smile, and oh my gosh, my eyes were watering. It was terrifying. And I didn't place or anything, probably as expected. But I came away from it being like, oh, I found that terrifying, but I still did it. I still got up on stage. I went through the motions. Did I feel like I was having a heart attack? Yes, I did. But I still did it. And I think that's the first time I really learnt that, you know, you can feel the fear and do it anyway. So I think I realized I had a lot of work to do after that on my self-worth and loving myself and going on a self-development journey. And then I kind of took a break from pageantry for a few years and didn't get back into it until probably like 4 or 5 years later. And I entered like Miss World, I've done like the Miss Grand pageant, but I came back to the Galaxy system 3 times. I think it's because out of all the pageant systems that I've entered, this one does focus on becoming the best version of you. And it's a very welcoming system. It's all about kind of like the long game and developing skills that you're going to take away for life. And I really liked that about this system. And also the friendships, everyone's so lovely. And I'm really glad I stuck with it because, you know, eventually I was able to
got the crown.
Yeah, but I think something that pageantry helped me with was developing my confidence and not being afraid to be seen. Like when you are in a pageant, you know, there is a lot of branding yourself, social media, getting on stage. You can't play small. You kind of have to play big and you have to own who you are. But if you don't know who you are, it's really hard to be like, this is my story and this is what I stand for. So, and when you're in your 20s, oh my God, you're in your 22, 23. It's like, who am I? Like, you've just come out of uni. Like, you don't know who you are. It's hard.
Yeah.
So I feel like over the past 10 years, I've discovered my passion and my purpose. So I think that the pageantry has become a lot easier since I first started because I'm really confident in who I am as a person and what I stand for. And I think that comes with time, you know, and kind of learning to love yourself and know your worth and being able to communicate that. So yeah, it's definitely been a journey.
That is wonderful. And it's so good to hear about how genuine it sounds in pageantry because as someone that's never been in it, I know a lot of people may think of the stereotypes of, oh, those are just pretty girls or they're just doing it for this and that. So to hear that you were able to find your confidence in doing it, as well as build genuine friendships and do all this community service, I think is absolutely so wonderful. Outside of pageantry, is there any other life experiences that you had that helped contribute to the confidence you were building during the past 10 years?
Honestly, so many. Like, where do I start? I have like so many random stories I could tell you. There might be a lot of girls listening to this that have big goals, big dreams, and want to take steps towards that. And I want to talk about some times where I've been knocked back. So I remember being really early 20s and I was like, I want to be a supermodel. That just sounds like such a fun job. You just fly around the world, you know, blah, blah, blah.
For sure.
Yeah. And I'm not tall. Like, I'm not a 6 foot tall, you know, Kendall Jenner type woman. But I was like, don't let that stop you. I love like the Delulu I had back then, by the way. Like, always be Delulu until it comes to Lulu. Okay? So
yes, I love that. I've only ever heard be Delulu, it's the Salulu, but I've never heard the Trulu. So I love the Trululu.
yeah, exactly. Young Kimmi Jayne was like, okay, let's just be a supermodel. How do you do that? I was like, you get an agent. And I live in Tasmania, which is the south of Australia. It's like right down the bottom. It's very small. We don't even really have agencies here. So I was like, oh, I'm going to have to get an agent on the mainland. Don't worry about the fact that I don't even live there, that it's far away, that I don't have a job to really pay for it. Who cares? It will be fine. And this is back when I think I was, still at uni and I was working at a fish and chip shop or something to like earn money on the side. So I didn't have a lot of it. But anyway, I emailed photos I took of myself to like every agency you can think of. I'm talking like in my bedroom being like, slay. And then I sent my photos over and I just got like thanks but no thanks from every single agency. Looking back, I can see why. But anyway, and I was crushed. I was like, oh, I guess it's my dream over. I was so sad. I was like, now what am I going to do that I can't be a supermodel? Life's over. But then there was this one agency, and they were a little smaller, and they were in Melbourne. And they were like, sure, can you come in for a meeting with us in 2 days? And I was just like, sure, no worries. What time suits you? Cool. So I like bought flights. I flew to Melbourne. I got in a taxi, and I was like going out in this taxi, like this is like the day where like my life changes, and I'm going to look back on this moment. I'm going to tell people this story. Whoa, I'm telling the story. It's not how I thought it would end, but anyway. And I was so nervous. And I remember like also going out, and this agency was like in suburbia, which I don't think is that weird, but I was also like, oh my God, like, is this like a trap? Like, am I going to get kidnapped? Oh my God. So very stressed. Anyway, I get there, I go up, and I'm shaking. I am so nervous, and it hits me. This is a real agency. And I go upstairs, and there's these two guys. It's like an open plan agency, so we didn't even go off into like another private area. I just sit down, and they're like, oh, and I was like, hi, I'm Kimmi. I've got a meeting with so-and-so. They're like, yep. Do you have your portfolio? I was like, yep. Gave them the portfolio, and they clicked through. I am not kidding. They just flicked through a few photos, and they were just kind of like, yeah, look, we really are looking for someone who's a bit taller. Thanks so much for coming in, but yeah, probably I don't know if it's going to work. And I'm like,
no.
Okay. And I was like, cue the sad Hilary Duff song.
No, literally. I would have started crying like on the spot in front of them if it was me, probably.
I left and did that, and then I called a taxi and I got in, and I get this taxi driver, and this is honestly so funny. He was such a nice man. He was like, oh, what have you been up to? And I was like, oh, I just went to a modeling agency, but yeah, it didn't work out. I'm not tall enough. He looked at me, he was like, oh, but you're so beautiful. Like, what are they doing? Like, go back. Do you want me to take you back? I'm like, no, trust me. Like, no, it's not going to be a thing. And he's like, what's in your bag? And I'm like, I've got heels. And he's like, just put the shoes on. Then you'll be tall. Like, it's fine. Like, put the heels on. You'll be this much taller. And I was like, no, dude, like, seriously, like, I'm going to try not to cry. And I'm like, trust me, like, it doesn't work like that. Like, no. He's like, I'll take you to another agency. Where do you want to go? He's like, so pushy. I was like, all right. So we go to another agency. I buzz, and I'm like, they're like, do you have an appointment? And I'm like, no. And they're like, yeah, we can't see. And I'm like, okay. And this guy, though, he's like having a great old day because he's talking to me. The taxi meter's running. He's making a ton of money. Like, anyway,
sure.
Went back home after this trip, and I was like, that was awful. What a waste of money. So depressing. But I looked at the funny side, and I thought to myself, I think it was a sign from God that gave me that hilarious taxi driver that just made me feel it's not the end of the world. This is not that serious. It sucks, and like it really hurt my feelings, and I was so young. I just wanted to be accepted into this magical world, and it didn't happen the way I wanted it to. But that guy had me in stitches, and I was laughing. I remember telling my mum when I got home, but she was laughing so hard, and she was like, that is so funny. And I guess why I'm telling this story is sometimes things don't work out exactly how you want, but it doesn't mean it's the end. And also sometimes I think life just needs to take a different path. Like, I don't feel like any regrets that I didn't try and pursue modeling super hard when I was that age. And to be honest, I mustn't have really wanted it because I had that one experience and I was just like, yeah, not for me. Whereas like if I really wanted it, I would have like got better photos. I would have kept trying. Like, and I'm kind of not glad, but I guess like life for me has taken such a different path, but I'm really happy with where I am. But I think as you get older, you look back on like what you think were failures and you kind of think like, no, that was just such a funny experience. And it's kind of just like, just one of those things, like a notch on your belt. You just like gain a lot of experiences and then that kind of shapes where you go next. So hard to hear when you're like in the thick of it, but nothing's ever as bad as it seems.
That's a beautiful story because I agree. I think everyone's life does not go the way that we planned. And I think that's something that I preach a lot on this podcast, especially because being in our 20s is just such a transformative decade. Like we might want to go one way and then the road veers us another way. I never thought I'd be on a podcast speaking with you today. You're across the world from me and you have overcome all of these hurdles to get to where you are. So even though you didn't get to model, you did get to walk across the stage and you obviously were able to build the confidence and had others believe in you and back you up, and you were able to receive the title. So can you talk a little bit more about that and how you went from getting put down in the modeling agency to finding yourself still able to walk across the stage and receiving the title?
How'd I go from, being butthurt to 10 years later winning a title and being able to compete in America? So something I've done continuously in my life is, and this is what I teach people, is, okay, you make a goal and, you try really hard to achieve it. But sometimes I think like it's okay if the goal changes. So modeling, that I didn't like that I was putting a lot of effort into that and then not getting much back. And then I found other things that I was good at and then I was going to get as much as I gave. So I guess that's kind of where pageantry comes in, because I felt like with pageantry, I mean, it's not like black and white. It's not like if you try hard, you win. It is tough. There's so many elements. But with pageantry, I felt like the more that I gave and the more that I put in, that I would start to see like a return on my investment of time and effort. In life, or over the last 10 years, I have continually put myself in situations where I don't know how this is going to go. I might not necessarily be good at it, but I'm going to stick my hand up because I want to like achieve and I want to get to the point where I can do X, Y, Z. For example, a few years ago, there was this the Tasmanian Fashion Festival. So you know how you have like Fashion Week everywhere? You've got Miami Swim, things like that. So we had like the Tasmanian Fashion Festival and I saw that they were looking for like models. But I thought, no, I want to go a step better. Like I want to present, like I want to MC the event. I want to host the event because I really wanted to get into public speaking because that's kind of like a newer goal that I have, like to do more MCing and hosting and that sort of thing, presenting. Had I ever done it before? No, like I'd never done that before. Yes, I have a podcast, but getting up in front of a ton of people is totally different. But what I want to teach people is don't let the fact that you haven't done something yet stop you from putting your hand up. Instead of applying for being a model, I reached out and said I'd be interested in auditioning to be the presenter. And I did the audition, they loved me, and then boom, they're like, sure, you can MC the fashion festival. And I was like,
that is so cool.
and I was like, yeah, and I was like, that's amazing. But then I was like, okay, now I'm going to figure out the how. How the hell does anyone learn how to do that without doing it, right? And I found this online speaking coach. She wasn't that cheap, but she was really good at what she did. And I just did some sessions with her, learnt the ins and outs of how to be a good MC. And then I did it. I was scared, but I got on stage. I did everything that I'd practiced. And I'm probably a lot better now than when I first did it, but I still did it. And I think that in life, you just have to be okay with not being perfect. Because I think that sometimes the fear of not being perfect, not being good enough stops us from even trying. It's a bad habit and we all do it. Just because I don't do something perfect doesn't mean I'm lesser of a person. Because I think we tie up a lot of our outputs with our worth as a human, and something I think I've had to learn, because I'm a very goals-orientated person. I always have big goals. I'm always changing the goals, moving the goalpost, and I think I'm almost always on this hamster wheel trying to achieve the next thing. I think self-worth is sometimes tied up with these external outputs, but that is not that healthy, and that makes life a roller coaster. So I think that it's really important to cultivate self-worth without the pretty shiny external metrics like a trophy or a pageant title or whatever, because we are innately worthy as human beings. I do think that action is a really important part of building your confidence and teaching yourself that, yeah, I can feel scared. Yes, I might not do something perfectly, but it's not going to stop me. I'm going to do it. It's going to be okay. And I'm going to learn and I'm going to grow from that. So I think just applying that to literally everything, but also mindset is a huge, huge part. I think you can't have one without the other. You can't, have a great mindset but not take action. And you can't take action but not bothered to work on your inner beliefs and your mindset. Something I've learned as I've become older, and plus thanks to TikTok, we see this stuff way more, like mental health and, self-belief and limiting beliefs is so much more common to talk about, which is great. Oh, there's a name for those negative thoughts we get in our head. It's limiting beliefs or negative thoughts, right? And I think if left unchecked, it can really affect our lives, because we have so many thoughts that run through our heads every single day, kind of on autopilot. And those stories that we just tell ourselves without even stopping to think hey, is that true? They can really hinder our growth and our happiness as a person. And for example, like a limiting belief could be honestly anything. Like they show up in dating, they show up in our careers. It could be like just even thinking, oh no, I'm not going to apply for that promotion. Like I'm not good enough. Who do I think I am? Or my boss is going to laugh at me. It could just be like anything. Just those like instant stories that we get when we try to like do something. Next time you get like one of those stories or those negative thoughts that pop into your head, instead of just accepting it as fact, because thoughts are not facts, they are just totally random, is going, oh, giving it a label. So next time you have a negative thought, don't just accept it. Just be like, oh, there's that negative thought again. Or, oh, there's that limiting belief again. And like labeling it as what it is.
Yeah.
Because then you can start to like separate yourself from the negative thought. The thing is, like, you know, a lot of these limiting beliefs and negative thoughts, they're rooted in experiences. So, you know, it could be childhood experiences, it could be negative experiences we've had at school, in the workplace, in relationships. And then what our brain does is it tries to protect us from ever feeling those negative thoughts ever again. So next time you want to go on a date, or next time you want to ask for a promotion or put yourself out there, your brain goes, oh, remember last time you tried to do that and that bad thing happened? We don't want that to happen again. So we're going to put out false alarm bells so that you don't take that step. If we listen to false thoughts, that keeps us super small. Yeah. So like I said, one, identify and go, oh, I think there's that limiting belief, or I think there's that negative thought again. Okay. And then replace it with something neutral and say something like, okay, oh, there's that limiting belief, but actually I'm safe to take this step right now. Or say something like, oh, there's that limiting belief, but actually everything could go in my favor. And just try and like neutralize it and replace it with the outcome that you want, whatever that is, like depending on what your limiting belief is. Because you need to kind of retrain your brain, your subconscious mind to think in your favor. So it's about going, you know what? That's a false belief. And actually everything could work out in my favor.
Well, I think I often get stuck in my head a lot of times. And even with this podcast, I just started it. I didn't know what I was doing. I just picked up, I bought a mic, I bought a camera, and I just went with it. So how are some ways that people can identify the fact from fiction? Because you are so right in saying everything that we're thinking isn't necessarily a factoid. It could just be us and our negative thoughts. But how can we really get into that and decide which is fact and which is fiction?
That is a tough one, because you shouldn't really try and wrestle with your thoughts, because then you give them more importance and you give them more meaning. So for example, you had a thought where you're like, oh, I shouldn't start a podcast because all my friends will think like, who am I? That's like who you think you are. So just say that was like,
yeah.
And then the thing is, it's a lot healthier and faster if you just go, oh, where did that come from? And just be like, oh, that's not true. And replace it with what the outcome you want. So and say something like, why wouldn't my friends support me? Actually, if my friends are good friends, they're going to love this. And even if they think it's a little bit cringe, I'm going to create this amazing podcast and it's all going to work in my favor. Because the opposite is, if you think maybe people would think it's really embarrassing and they will hate the podcast, if you look for evidence, you will find it. Does that make sense? So if you want to look for bad evidence that your negative thoughts are true, you're going to find it if you look hard enough. And that actually makes your thoughts, negative thoughts, so much stronger and so much more potent. And you're giving it like too much credit. But if you have a negative thought, like I'm not good enough or blah, 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 like if you say I'm not good enough, if you want to go look for evidence, yeah, you might find it. Doesn't mean it's true though. It's just your brain trying to be like, you need to care about this. This is important. Because sometimes when we try to ignore negative thoughts, we still feel a bit stressed. And that's your brain being like, shouldn't you be worried about that? And your brain is like, whoa, why are you acting so chill? We should be thinking about this. No, you shouldn't. So it takes a lot of practice, because if we could ignore negative thoughts, we would be doing it and psychologists would be out of a job, right? It's not that easy. I think about training your mindset like going to the gym. It's like when you have a negative thought or limiting belief, it's a choice. It's a tough one to be like, you know what? Thank you, brain, for this false story that you're making up, but I don't really need to worry about that right now. And then you just have to move on with your day, because if you act like that thought is irrelevant and you just like go about your business, then your brain eventually is like, I don't think she needs to worry about that false thought, so we're going to let that go now. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like training this monkey brain of ours to work in our favor, to see the positive and to think like everything's going to work out. And it's tough. Like, it's not easy. It definitely takes time.
Yeah, but that's awesome. And I think what it really comes back to is being kind to ourselves and really
Yeah.
just putting all of our trust and belief in ourselves. Because what you were saying is kind of, if we're manifesting these negative things, then they're more likely to come true than if we just sit down and say, hey, this is a thought, but we're going to set it aside and we're going to keep moving forward.
I definitely used to be someone who was like a worst case scenario thinker in the past, and untraining that like thought pattern and learning new thought patterns definitely has taken time, but it's so worth it. And it just makes life a lot easier, I think.
And so it does take a lot of time and a lot of commitment and dedication to do that. So, can you talk a little bit more about your approach to setting some goals and pursuing these goals with being committed and dedicated, just not even just with limiting beliefs, but with just life in general?
Yeah, sure. So with goal setting, I love setting big goals for myself. And it's like a little bit of a process, but it's actually quite simple. If I have a goal, what I do at the beginning of each year is I create a vision board and I put all of my goals on my vision board. And sometimes I'll like have a 6-month review, because if I've achieved them, I'll like replace them with other goals. What I do is I usually go, okay, these are my goals, put them on a vision board, and I'll create like a plan. And I usually like look at like my goals in a 12-month period. I'm not like I've got to achieve
Mm.
this in 7 days. Most big goals, they take time. So what I'll do is I have Trello. I don't know if you've ever heard of Trello. It's like you can have a free account. Just like, it's like a, I don't know, planning tool. And
Yeah.
I will literally map out every single month, like January, February, March, April, May. And then I will break down my big goal into like actual milestones. So just say the big goal was like win a pageant. I would then break that down to actionable steps. So I'd be like, okay, what do I actually need to do to achieve that? And then I'd be like, well, I have to do XYZ appearances. I need to get a sponsor. I need to raise this much money for charity. I need to do a photo shoot. I need to do this. And I would break it down, and then I would spread those tasks out like in it, like over the different months leading up to the pageant. And then there's SMART goals, because I think like you have the big goal, and you have to break it down into milestones, and then you kind of have to break the milestones down into smaller steps and actually give them like a date and a timeline you have to like achieve them by. So if you look at my calendar each month, I have got visual reminders everywhere that's like, this month I have to do these steps, because they're feeding into like the greater goal. I don't just put the goal for this month is to, I don't know, become a TV presenter. No, I would have the goal for this month is to reach out to TV show studios or practice my on-camera skills or whatever. Because
Yeah.
if you only put on your vision board, or you only put in your diary like the big end goal, you're not actually giving yourself an action plan to get there. And then you get overwhelmed and you think, that's so far away. How am I ever going to do that? But if you break a goal down into actual steps, you're like, well, I can do that step. And then you do it, and then you kind of build momentum, and then you get closer to your goal. So I apply that to literally every goal in my life. It's like, start big, work backwards, like reverse engineer it, break it down into small steps, and then like map it out over like a 12-month calendar.
I love that. And I hope you listeners are taking notes, because I know I'm taking mental notes. And as soon as I listen back to this episode, I'm going to be writing them down. But I think that one thing that people might challenge you with in this statement is, first of all, I love that you're setting the big goal and then breaking it into actionable parts.
Mm.
But I think for a lot of us, the hardest part is the consistency with showing up each day to even get to the little goals. So, can you talk a little bit about some of the steps you take to be consistent and even achieving the little milestones?
Yes, being consistent is the key to success. It's not about taking huge, big action once a month. It's honestly the small things you do every day. And it is hard, because I think something I've struggled with, and probably like listeners might be able to relate to this, it's like sometimes it feels like you're working so hard every day and you're not seeing results.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
when you're not seeing the big shiny end result, it can be disheartening and it can be really demotivating. And then we lose momentum and we lose that consistency, because we're like, well, I've been trying hard for 4 weeks and nothing's happening, and I just want to like give up and just watch Kardashians, which, you know, golf queen, I love the Kardashians. I think that the key to being consistent is delayed gratification. And that's tough because like my mum jokes that I like came out of the womb like impatient. I'm someone who wants everything yesterday. And it's a tough skill. Like patience is a virtue. When you're on the path to achieving success, or when you're trying to achieve your goals and you're just like in the nitty gritty day to day, grind, you have to think big and remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing, and go back to your deeper purpose and your why. Ask yourself, like, wait, why do I want this goal? Like, seriously, like, what is that? What will it mean for me? And I don't know, like, everyone's goals are so different. It could be like, I want to earn more money. It could be, I want to be more confident. It could be, I want a boyfriend. Like, it could be anything. But I think you have to go deeper and go, why would this be beneficial to my life? And then I think that when you can kind of tap into like the deeper purpose behind what you're doing, that's how you can kind of get through the fatigue or the boredom or the days where you just don't feel very motivated, because you're doing it for a high purpose. And you have to stay laser focused on delayed gratification. Yes, it's annoying right now and I'm not seeing results right now, but I have to keep going or I'm never going to get there.
Thank you for sharing. And I think that that's something that I really relate to, because even growing up, this is going to probably sound ridiculous, but when all the little boys and girls were saying what they wanted to be, I would always just write, I want to be famous. And what does that even truly mean at the end of the day? So I sat there a few years ago and I even had to rethink of what famous really meant and looked like to me this year as a 25-year-old, especially in a world where there's influencers blowing up every day, and that we obviously have our high profile celebrities in the news and on their TV screens. And to me, what famous meant when I boiled it down was really just, I want to help people. And how can I help people if I can't get in front of people? So I want to be able to be in front of as many people as I can and impact as many people as I can positively. And so that was my pretty much why, and the how I'm doing that, I feel like, is through my podcast. So I hope that you are finding through your pageantry your why and your how.
Yes, absolutely. It's so funny you just said that when you were a kid, you were like, I want to be famous. I was the same. That's why I thought that at the time modeling was going to give me what I wanted. But what I know for sure now is that it wasn't fame, because like, what is fame, right? Like, why do we want that?
Exactly.
And I think it boils down to what the need or the want or the desire to feel seen, and also to make an impact and feel valuable as a person, right? We all want to feel needed. We all want to feel important. And I think because, superstars are put on these pedestals, I think that we grow up thinking like, to be important, to be seen, to be valued. If you're not famous, like, who are you? But that is so not true. And I think my why, my mission, my purpose in life now is, I teach women how to use personal branding to achieve their goals and get visible and make their vision board dreams a reality. And that's not something that like I need to be famous for, but it gives me purpose in life. It makes me feel fulfilled. I feel valuable because I'm helping people on their own journeys, and it's very wholesome, and it's given me everything that I've ever wanted. And no, I'm not a Kendall Jenner, but I'm so happy and I'm so grateful to the pageant industry that's kind of forced me to take a big look at myself in the mirror and go, what do you actually want to do in your life? You know what I mean? I thought it was be a model, but I was wrong. I just wanted something where I felt valued and I could contribute, raise my own visibility as well. It's really interesting that I think a lot of people grow up with that goal of like, I want to be rich and I want to be famous. But if you go deeper, you discover like, no, there's probably something else, something a bit deeper that you want, that you think fame and fortune is going to give you. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Exactly. And I feel like people that do have this fame and fortune, some of them, their goals is just to be like us, to be able to still have a normal life and just exist in the world. I did want to talk a little bit about your consulting and your personal branding coaching. Are you accepting any clients from the US? Because I know that's where a large listener base is for me. I have a lot of people in Canada as well. But do you do that virtually? Is that something that the listeners could sign up for?
Yes, I do it 100% virtually. So I run group coaching sessions for women. I do one-on-ones as well. But I do have currently a 4-week personal branding coaching program, and I'm going to be launching soon actually a program to teach people how to become an online coach, because I think that There's lots of people that I know that want to be online coaches to share whatever skill they have. And I've
Mm-hmm.
developed a program that incorporates, personal branding, Instagram content, marketing, sales, like it's a whole thing. But if people are interested in developing their personal brand, then they can check out my Instagram page at Kimmi Jayne Consulting, or send me a DM and get in touch.
Okay, perfect. Well, I will put all of your information in the show notes. But now I'd love to switch gears a little bit because I did some questions from the listeners.
Oh,
So
cool.
one, yeah, so I had them submit some questions for you. And so the first question is, what are some things that you do each day or each morning to be more confident?
Not every morning, because sometimes my mornings I sleep in and I'm like rushing to work and they're hectic. I say affirmations out loud. And I know like some people think, oh, is that woo woo? No, I feel like it's so good. It's all about reprogramming your subconscious. And I will literally say out loud, even if I'm like super tired, I'll be like, I love myself. I'm worthy. I deserve to be happy. And I might be really tired and I might not be feeling it, but I will sit there, put on some nice meditation music, and I will say affirmations out loud, because I think that it's really good to be feeding your brain like positive messaging.
Hmm. I agree. And what I found too is when I'm doing stuff like that, or even when I'm forcing myself to dance, because I really love to dance and I feel like it boosts my mood, even if it is woo woo, or even if it makes me feel silly, I'm starting the day with a smile. Even if I feel like I'm being ridiculous, that usually puts me in the right mindset to keep moving forward because no one's going to be sitting there crying. Well, I guess you could be sitting there crying, like, I'm worthy, I deserve, but just by saying those things and feeding yourself those beliefs, you're going to be able to go into the day with more success. So, thank you for sharing that. The next one is, what are some actionable steps I can take to start my journey towards achieving my goals? You kind of touched on this, but if there's anything else you want to add into it.
The main thing would be, like I said before, start with a big goal, reverse engineer it, work backwards to break down, milestones and action steps. And one thing I forgot to mention was, if, you map out your action plan and then, the first couple of months you're like killing it, kicking goals, building momentum. Sometimes you reach a point where you're like, oh, I'm stuck because I don't have the skills, I don't have the knowledge, and you feel like you're stuck and you can't progress. And that's where a lot of people stop trying to achieve their goals. When you're there, don't be afraid to like invest in a mentor or invest in a coach or reach out to someone and ask for advice. Like, don't let a hurdle stop you. If you feel like you don't have the skills or the knowledge or the network, just, go out and get the knowledge, go out and get the skills, go get whatever you need, because like I'm not an expert in a ton of stuff and I know that. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever I reach a point where I'm like, oh, I don't know how to do this, I fast track it. I'm like, I'm just going to pay a coach. I'm going to ask a friend. I'm going to get help. Like, don't be afraid to get help so that you can keep progressing so you don't lose that momentum.
Yes, I think help is so, so important. And it's okay to not be perfect at everything, which I know we've said so many times on this podcast. The listeners also want to know where they can see you compete. So, is Miss Galaxy streamed on TV? Can you only show up in person in Florida? How can we see you compete for the title?
They can see it on YouTube. It's going to be streamed on YouTube. I mean, yes, you can go in person, but yes, it's always streamed on YouTube. So I'll share it on my stories for sure. So if anyone wants to like tune in and watch and cheer me on virtually, I would love
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll be there cheering you on. And last
that.
but certainly not least, the one thing I ask every single person that comes on this podcast is, what is your number one piece of advice for 20 something?
Oh, such a good question. My number one piece of advice for 20 somethings is to go hard at your goals and don't let fear hold you back, but also embrace imperfection. And I know everyone says, like, oh, embrace imperfection, you don't have to be perfect. But really, sustaining momentum, taking action, and moving forward is going to take you so far in life over, stressing over it if you're going to do something perfectly and letting fear hold you back. Like, if I could go back in time, I wouldn't change a lot, but one thing I would tell my younger self is really just go for it. Like, be a
Hmm.
fool, like make a mistake, like don't be perfect, but just go for it. Like, have experiences, don't hold yourself back. So that's my number one piece of advice.
Amazing. I think the same. I think that if I could go back and tell myself something, it would just be to start something sooner and not worry what other people are thinking. So, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into our episode today. If you like the episode, please be sure to rate it and subscribe wherever you're getting your podcasts. Make sure to check out Miss Kimmi Jayne. And as always, I'm Darian Alexis, and don't forget to survive and thrive.